After the divorce, she took care of her ex-mother-in-law for 3 years. One day, returning from the market, an unexpected shock awaited her at home, leaving her completely speechless. Abby was a young woman with an easy smile and a dreamy look, who always found comfort and love in the arms of her grandparents, who raised her after the loss of her parents. Her life was simple but filled with affection and care. In the last year of high school, her world changed when she met William, a charismatic and popular guy at school. "Hey, Abby. Are you going to the game on Friday?" asked William, leaning on her table during the break. "Oh, I don't know. I'm not really into games," replied Abby, a bit shy. "You should go." "Hey, maybe we can get to know each other better," suggested William, with a charming smile. Abby felt a flutter in her stomach, a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Maybe I'll go," she said, trying to hide her enthusiasm. From that day on, they began to get closer. William showed Abby a new world, full of adventures and emotions. She, in turn, offered him a safe haven, a place of understanding and affection. Their relationship flourished quickly. One day, William, holding Abby's hands, said enthusiastically, "I want you to meet my family. They will love you." The visit was a milestone in Abby's life. Her mother-in-law, an elegant woman with a welcoming smile, welcomed her with open arms. "William always talks so much about you. I'm so happy to finally meet you," she said, embracing Abby warmly. Her father-in-law, a man of few words but with a gentle gaze, nodded approvingly. Abby immediately felt like part of that family, something she had always wished for deep down. At dinner, while everyone laughed and shared stories, Abby realized how special that family was. She and William looked at each other with a gleam in their eyes, a sense of mutual belonging that only grew that night. Upon returning home, Abby knew that her life would never be the same. Years later, they got married, and married life began as a fairy tale for Abby and William. They shared a deep love and an unwavering partnership, filling each moment with happiness and affection. However, fate had other plans. In the first year of marriage, a tragedy shook Abby's world. William's father unexpectedly passed away, leaving a huge void in the family. The night they received the news was marked by tears and disbelief. "It can't be true. William, your father was fine yesterday," Abby said, holding William's trembling hands. "I don't know how I'm going to deal with this." Abby stood by William and his mother, Mrs. Amber, offering support and comfort. The loss of the father brought them together in a way they could have never imagined. Mrs. Amber, now a widow, found in Abby not only a daughter-in-law but a daughter. "You have been an angel to us, my dear. I don't know what we would do without you," Mrs. Amber said, moved. In the following months, Abby dedicated herself even more to taking care of her mother-in-law, strengthening the bond between them. They shared long conversations, laughter, and even tears, healing the wounds left by the loss together. One afternoon, Mrs. Amber looked at Abby with teary eyes and said, "You are like the daughter I lost, Abby. I will always be here for you." This deep connection sealed a relationship that went far beyond the bonds of marriage. It was a soul connection, a pure and sincere love that emerged from the shadows of sadness, bringing light and hope to both. The routine in Abby and William's house gradually changed. William, who was affectionate and attentive, began to show a different side. He often talked about having children, an idea that Abby did not share at that moment. The pressure began to create a palpable tension between them. "Love, don't you think it's time for us to have our first baby?" William asked one night during dinner. Abby, hesitant, replied, "William, I'm not ready yet. I want to focus on us before thinking about children." William sighed, visibly frustrated, and dinner ended in an uncomfortable silence. In the following days, he became more distant and cold, a stark contrast to the man Abby had fallen in love with. Worried about William's change in behavior, Abby decided to talk to Mrs. Amber. One morning, while they were in the kitchen, Abby mentioned the situation to Mrs. Amber. "I'm concerned about William. He has changed so much," Abby said, her voice trembling. Mrs. Amber, putting the dishes aside, called Abby to sit with a serious look. She began to speak, "My dear, I love my son, but you need to know something. William has been married 3 times before you. In all those marriages, he was unfaithful, always using the excuse of wanting children." Abby felt like the ground was opening beneath her feet. "But does that mean that?" She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. Mrs. Amber held Abby's hands, looking her in the eyes. I don't want you to get hurt, my daughter. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can give." This conversation was a turning point for Abby. She began to see William in a different light, questioning whether the love she felt was enough to overcome the shadows of the past. Mrs. Amber's revelation not only opened Abby's eyes to the reality of her marriage but also strengthened the bond between the two women even more. United now by a painful truth, Abby found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. She felt betrayed, confused, but above all, desperate to save her marriage. She began trying to get pregnant, believing that it could bring William back to the loving relationship they once shared. Months passed without success, and the tension between them only grew. One night, after another failed attempt, William exploded in a fit of anger. "This is unbelievable, Abby. You're not even fit to have a child," he shouted, casting a look of disappointment upon her. Abby, struck by the cruel words, felt a mix of pain and anger. "How can you say something like that, William?" she retorted, with tears in her eyes. "I tried for us. But what about you? What are you doing for us?" William, in a moment of fury, revealed the harsh truth. "I'm with someone else, Abby. Someone who can give me what I want, what you can't." Abby's world crumbled with those words. She stared at William, feeling a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. "So, was that it? Our entire love, our marriage was only until you found someone who could have children?" William, without showing remorse, coldly replied, "I need to move on, Abby. I need a family, and you can't give me that." William's words were like knives in Abby's heart. She realized that the man she loved never existed. Seeking refuge in Mrs. Amber's care was a welcome distraction, a way to channel her pain and betrayal into something positive. However, an unexpected twist awaited Abby. Mrs. Amber suffered a stroke, being hospitalized immediately. Abby received the news with a mix of shock and concern. Rushing to the hospital, she found Mrs. Amber in a hospital bed, fragile and vulnerable. "How is she?" Abby asked, holding back tears as she approached the doctor. "Stable, but she'll need physical therapy," the doctor said. Abby, holding Mrs. Amber's hand, said gently, "You'll get better, Mrs. Amber. We're in this together." Mrs. Amber, with a weak but grateful voice, replied, "My dear, you're an angel. I can never thank you enough for everything you're doing for me." "No need to thank," Abby replied, with a gentle smile. "You're my family, and that's what families do." This journey of care and dedication not only strengthened the bond between Abby and Mrs. Amber but also brought them closer, forming an unbreakable connection. Mrs. Amber, though still fragile, showed clear signs of recovery, thanks to Abby's tireless dedication. On a sunny afternoon, while having tea in the garden, Mrs. Amber, with an affectionate smile, said to Abby, "You've become the daughter I never had. I don't know how life would have been without you around." Abby, holding Mrs. Amber's hand, responded lovingly, "You've given me a purpose, Mrs. Amber. You've taught me about strength and love. I'm grateful for every moment." The two supported each other, sharing laughter, stories, and sometimes tears. This deep connection was a testament to the power of unconditional love that transcends blood ties. "Mrs. Amber, I never had a daughter, but if I did, I'd want her to be just like you," confessed Mrs. Amber one of those afternoons. Abby smiled, feeling immense joy in her heart. That moment sealed a relationship that went far beyond the bonds of marriage. It was a connection of souls, a pure and sincere love that emerged from the shadows of sadness, bringing light and hope to both. While Mrs. Amber was recovering, Abby, filled with gratitude and love, continued taking care of her. The routine in Abby and William's house gradually changed. William, who was initially a peripheral figure in the house, observed the conversation from a distance. He approached hesitantly, saying, "Abby, I just want to say that I'm happy for you. You deserve all the happiness in the world." Abby, looking at William, replied that, despite the challenges, she had played a crucial role in shaping this extraordinary woman. With each new dawn, she expressed gratitude for the most valuable lesson she had learned: true love, the kind that heals and transforms, comes from within and extends to the world around you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to not miss any new stories. And most importantly, we would love to hear your opinion in the comments. Until next time.